if you want to be in your feminine, do these 3 things. Or if you want to create a space for someone else to be in their feminine, do these 3 things. Sort of. Number 3 is going to be a little bit tricky, and this one's not necessarily for you. All right, we'll get to that. Number 3 is a really, really good one. So I'll talk about it when we get there. Let me start with this. There is not a woman that I have met, and if I have, it's maybe like 1 or 2, who don't long to be in their feminine more often, or who don't long to be in a deeper, truer, fuller expression of their feminine. So maybe it's women who are able to be in their feminine, but know that there's more to their full feminine and are longing to be able to express. Maybe it's wild woman, maybe it's their erotic nature, maybe it's their medicine witch woman, but there's something like a wider spectrum of the feminine. I just invite us to feel into that for a moment, right? Like, wow, if there's not a woman that I've met, and I hold circles for thousands of women all around the globe, there's not a woman that I've met, and if there is, it's maybe 1 or 2, who aren't longing to either be in their feminine more often or longing to be in a deeper, truer, fuller expression of their feminine. We've got something going on, and I want to talk about it. So I want to share 3 things that will help us to either be in our own feminine anytime, anywhere. Big call, I know, big call. For most of us, we have to work up to that, right? Like big call. That's a skill and that's practice to be able to allow that feminine essence to be flowing constantly, always flowing, whether we're walking down the street, whether we're in a grocery store, whether we're in a business meeting, whether we're mothering, whether we're dancing fluidly in the kitchen, right? So that's what we're working toward. And I won't go into that. I want to focus on these 3. So, 1, the feminine has to feel accepted. Has to feel accepted. If we can't create a space for her to be in her fullness, she can't do it. Now just think about ourselves. If I am judging, and this is a true story, if I am judging my full sexual nature, I will never express that part of my feminine. If I am judging my deeply emotional sensitivity, I will never express that. If I am judging my chaotic, ever-changing wildness, I will never express that. If I am judging my fierce feminine, my raging enough, my strong boundary feminine, if I'm judging that, I will never express that, right? And now here's a great reflection point. Which aspects of the feminine are you, whether you're primarily identified with the feminine or you're not, which aspects of the feminine do you have judgment toward? Ooh, I have judgment toward feminine wildness. I have judgment toward feminine emotional nature. I have judgment toward feminine chaos. I have judgment toward feminine sexuality. I have judgment toward whatever it is. Something to feel into is 6 faces of the feminine. And I'm sure there's a video we've done. There'll be a video up here. There'll be a link in the bottom. There's also our website, ReWildingForWomen.com. There's a way to feel into 6 faces. Now there could be 20,000 faces. There could be 3 faces, but it's just a little tool. So you'll find links all over the place if you want to just go, oh, cool, here's 6 to feel into. It gives you something tangible if you kind of want to go down that rabbit hole. But let's go back to this. So 1, when we are creating a space for the feminine to not just arise and express, but to flourish in our family systems, in our communities, in our environments, in our work environments, in our home life, in ourselves, in our relationship, in our partner. It's really coming into a place of healthy, beautiful state of love, awe, and gratitude for all expressions of the feminine. When she's heart connected, when she's clean, when she's clear, not toxic feminine. That's a whole different, not like distorted toxic feminine, not projecting, none of that stuff. I'm talking about raw pure essences here. That's a whole nother topic that we could talk about. I think there's another video on that, toxic feminine, toxic masculine. I don't know, you find another link here and a link down below if you want to journey into that rabbit hole. But really our relationship to the feminine in all forms, in all of her forms. This is where goddess work comes in handy, right? I get the question oftentimes in our Facebook group a lot. If you want to join our Facebook group, there's a link there and below. But I get the question often, like, why goddess work? Like, what is it with archetypal embodiment work? Why should I work with these different threads of feminine, these different flavors of Shakti? What's in it? What's in it? This is one thing that's in it, is we really get to see the different flavors of the feminine, even the flavors that weren't necessarily in our family systems, not in our societies, not in our culture. We get to see what we're unconscious to. We get to see what is not alive in us. That's a hint for point number 3. All right, so stick around. We'll get to that one. Point number 2 is safe space. So one, if you can feel, if we have this open awe space, this radical acceptance of the full feminine, we are innately creating a safe space. That's one way to innately create a safe space. I like this example of talking about safe space from a very tangible way. So if I'm creating a retreat, which I am in September, there's a women's only retreat. You can find details about that below and maybe at the link above too. I'm creating a women's only retreat that is nourishing the feminine. That is all about feminine awakening, feminine aliveness, feminine expression. I'm creating a space for that to come alive in women. This is a women's only retreat. So I'm creating a space for that to come alive. What do I do to create that safe space for the feminine to awaken, to arise, to express? I physically create a very safe space for her. I physically create a very safe space for her, right? There's no one's coming in this retreat center. No one's coming in this retreat center, right? I create a safe space via plants, via airflow, via light, via water. I use elements to create a safe space. I also have support staff that creates a safe space. Physical. I'm only talking about the physical here. I'm physically creating a safe space. There's no one coming up this driveway. There's no one coming near this retreat center, right? There's a lot of space between me and anyone else here, right? So physically, I create a safe space. Also, even more importantly, in my opinion, is I energetically create a safe space for the feminine. I energetically, with my consciousness, permeate, penetrate the whole of the space with my consciousness. Anyone can do this. You just have to be trained to do this. By the way, we'll do this in the men and women's sexual and healing and awakening retreat in September. So if you're like, wow, that is a skill I would love to have, is the ability to hold the space for the feminine, the ability to dance with the feminine, the ability to open up to all of the different threads of the feminine, and the ability to pervade my consciousness into anything, anywhere, anytime. That's a great one, whether you're identified with masculine, feminine, both, doesn't matter. It's open to all genders. Anyways, create this safe space. Like, this becomes sacred space for my woman. I'm just using those words because there's a different energy to it. So just allow me to just play a little bit, right? I am creating safe space for my woman in her allness. This is sacred space. And this space honors her fullness. It loves her feminine. It worships her feminine. It is devoted to her feminine. And I permeate the whole of that space. Now that is a safety. That is a safe feeling that no one can deny. That is a safe feeling that no one can deny. And my devotion to that feminine, my devotion, right? My devotion, my awe, my love for that feminine, my devotion to it, innately calls it out. Innately calls it out. Calls it out. It calls it out. It calls it into the space. It calls it through. It calls it out, right? It nourishes it. It's like a plant blossoming, like a flower blossoming. It's like sun and water for a flower blossoming. And the feminine is like, it almost like can't help but to just arise through and out of her. It just like can't help it but to do that. I know I'm talking in men and women terms, and I said her, but it's open to all of us, right? It's open to all of us. Okay, so that's point number 2, is you create a space. You create that safe space. Create that safe space. Either for others, for a group, or for ourselves. So also create that safe space for yourself. Create that safe space for yourself. There is a way that I think I talked about this right at the start, that anyone can be in our full feminine anywhere, because we are also able to do that simultaneously. We are also able to permeate, pervade consciousness, right? So that we have this safe, sacred space to allow inner feminine energy to constantly flow. Inner bliss, inner pleasure, inner joy, inner aliveness, inner sexiness, inner beauty to constantly be flowing. Imagine how nourishing that would be to your nervous system, to your mental health, your emotional health, your physical body. That is like the most nourishing life force juice, like running through every cell, every organ, every bone, every layer of your being possible all of the time. That's kind of the way that I want to live. Okay. Step 3, this is where I promise we're spinning it back. So we're spinning it back on the feminine. We're spinning it back on the feminine. And it is a little bit linked to number 1. And it's, if we look at kind of the full spectrum of the feminine, we look at all the different flavors of the feminine. And now it's not only do we have awe and appreciation and radical acceptance of them, we have opened our capacity. We have awakened and enlivened that capacity within our being. We have allowed for our bodies to rewire themselves. And this is such wild to find words for this, but we have shifted our energetics. We've shifted even our nervous system for its capacity to hold that much pleasure and that much life force and that much juice and that much aliveness and that much creative potency, right? But it's literally, you hear all these words in some of the feminine paths or the goddess traditions of like transmission, right? And activations, transmissions, and initiations into, like this goddess or this energy or this feminine flavor or whatever. And that's true, but it's simply allowing that essence to come alive in you. That's it. It's finding the practices, the people, the spaces, the circles, the transmissions to come alive in you. And that's how the feminine works. She's transmission based. She's activation based. She's energy based, right? It's not by reading a thing in a book typically because it doesn't have enough juice in it. It's literally like, think about a time when you've maybe stood, see so many times, like I can share these examples, but so many times we're not open to receiving the energy. But like the feminine gives energy, right? It flows out of her, pours out of her. It pours out of her. And now, I used to say this in retreats a lot. We haven't done an in-person retreat in a long time, so I haven't said this, but I'm sure I will in September, which, by the way, you're so welcome to join us on one of those retreats if it sings to you. Again, details to both of them are linked here and links below. But I used to say this line a lot is, the Shakti in me talks to the Shakti in you, right? They talk to each other. So if I'm in a space of opening up to my like erotic, sensual, soft, for some reason is coming in, soft side, right? And I'm in a space of opening up to that. And you're in a receptive space. So you have to be in a safe space. You have to be in a non-judgmental space, those 1 and 2 that we've already talked about. And you're in that space and you're able to open, right? And to receive. And it's like this line being lit up in me talks to that line in you, and they just talk to each other, right? And if that line in you hasn't been enlivened or awakened yet, that's all it does, is it's just like, oh, and this will be you. And this was me when I first started doing all of this work. It was like, oh, wow, I didn't even know I had that. Oh, I wish that would have happened when I was like 16. Wow. All right, I think that's a great place to end on. You will find another video if you want to explore more of this up here, and in the link below, you will find comments below. If you liked this, hit the thumbs up button, leave a comment for what you would love to explore, or what was the most powerful thing you got out of this today? Like, what hit you the strongest in this exploration today? All right, so much love to you. I'll see you when I see you, where I see you, and how I see you. Mwah.